Hello and welcome to O.D.Plays. Today we'll be doing a 6-player gameplay of a Game of Thrones, the board game. If you're watching this video, I assume you already have a basic understanding of the rules of the game, and you're just here to find out if this game is the right fit for yourself and your gaming group. I already have the game board set up for 6 players, and already secretly assigned orders for each other houses, except for our own house, House of Martell. Before we get started by assigning the orders to the units, there's something I must clarify first. In a normal game, you will normally have the units stand up on the board like so. But it's really hard in the video for you to tell if that's a knight unit, a footman unit, or a siege engine. So instead, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to have the units lay flat on the board like so. So there's no question that as to what unit type these units are. If this does not mean that these units are routed as a result of losing a combat. And if they are routed in this video, then I will instead make them stand up on the board like so. Alright, so let's get started with this round here by assigning our orders to our units here. Now looking at the map, we have 2 immediate neighbors, one in the west of the Tyrell players, the other one is the north, the Baratheon players. We don't really need to worry about the Tyrell players just yet because they're still a little bit farther away to our lane areas here. The Baratheons, however, they have 2 ships in the Shipbreaker's Bay, which is just 1 space away from the East Summer Sea. If their ships are able to conquer the East Summer Sea, that will be very bad news for us because they will be able to transport their ground units through their ships to our lane areas here, and our castles and strongholds will be very vulnerable. So in order to prevent that from happening, we're going to place a March +1 order here to march the ship out of the Sea of Dorne into the East Summer Sea to make sure we actually secure the sea area and not allowing the Baratheon to have an advantage over us. Now, the Baratheon players did ensure that they have no interest in the East Summer Sea. In fact, their plan was to take over King's Landing in this round. But then one can never be too careful because in the Game of Thrones, you can say one thing and do the other thing completely different. So, and placing a +1 here is probably a safe bet. After all, we do have 2 special orders of the stars that we can use at our disposal, so why not? As a follow-up to that order, we're going to place a second special order in Sunspear, the special consolidate power. Once the ship is marched out of the Sea of Dorne into the East Summer Sea, we're going to use this order to muster another ship in the Sea of Dorne. That way, our units will be able to move around relatively easily between all the land areas in around the Sea of Dorne. And also, we're going to use a ship here to support the ship in the East Summer Sea, making it a lot more difficult to conquer from either the Baratheon player or the Tyrell players of the West. And lastly, we will be placing a march order in the Salt Shore, and we're also going to leave a power token in this area as well. I think we're going to move the footman units into Starfall so that we'll get an extra castle and also a barrel. The barrels are important because we want to make sure we have enough army size that's big enough to either defend ourselves or to conquer other players. Typically, you will assign your orders in secret, so these should have been face down, but that's a little bit ridiculous in a video, so we're gonna just leave them face up like this. And now that we have assigned our orders for our troop units, we can go ahead and reveal all the other orders assigned to the other houses. Before moving on to resolve each individual orders, the Lannister player decided to use their Messenger Raven token to look at the top card on the Wildling deck. And they have decided to keep the card on the top of the Wildling deck. And now we move on to resolve the raid orders, which there are none, so we instead resolve the march orders next, starting with the Baratheon player. The Baratheons have 2 march orders to resolve. They have decided to resolve the March +0 order in Shipbreaker Bay first, by moving one of the 2 ships into the Blackwater Bay. And this forms a naval bridge between the Dragonstone and the rest of the Westeros land. Next up is House Lannister's turn. House Lannister and House Greyjoy are two of the most interesting houses in the entire game because of their close proximity to each other. It's easy for them to have conflicts between the 2 houses, and even if they decide to make alliances, it's very easy to make one betray the other houses and put the other house in a very disadvantageous position. But nevertheless, the Lannisters has decided to make a peaceful agreement with the Greyjoys, and the Greyjoys have accepted. Basically, they are not to attack each other, and they will not raid each other either. The River Run will belong to the Lannisters, but the Lannister will not be allowed to march north into Seaguard and any of the territories up north. And of course, the Greyjoys have agreed not to take over River Run either. So the Lannisters will now resolve their first march order, which is the March +0 in Lannisport, moving both the footmen and the knight unit into Stony Set. The Stark will now move after the Lannisters. Seeing how the Baratheon player already moved their ships in Shipbreaker Bay, now the Stark decided to move their March +1 order and moving the ship from the Silvern Sea into the Narrow Sea. And now it's back to our turn, our very first move. It doesn't matter which march order we resolve first, because now that we know the Baratheon player, true to their words, they will not come to the East Summer Sea, we can move either march orders first and it would not make any differences. So we're going to resolve the March +0 order first in Salt Shore and move our footman unit into Starfall. And we're also gonna leave behind a power token so that we don't lose control of the barrel in the Salt Shore. Next up are the Greyjoys. They only have one march order to resolve. They are going to move the footman units into Seaguard, and we'll place a power token in Greywater Watch so that they don't lose the barrel there. And of course, I should have updated the victory track right away. So because we moved into Starfall, the Martell will now have 2 castles and strongholds, and Greyjoy having acquired Seaguard, they will now have 2 as well. I may do this off screen sometimes in the future, just so you know. And next up is the Tyrell's turn. They will resolve the March +0 order in the Red One Straits, moving the ship into the West Summer Sea. Coming back to the Baratheon player again, they will now resolve their March +1 order in Dragonstone by moving both of the knight unit and the footmen into King's Landing via the naval bridge. Now they have a combat strength of 2, 3, 4, and 5 from the support in Kingswood, and that's just enough to defeat the neutral force in the King's Landing and acquire their second stronghold. And now the Baratheons also have a second stronghold. And now it's the Lannister player's turn. They will resolve the March +1 order, moving one footman into River Run and the other one into Harrenhal. And now they have a total of 3 castles and strongholds. They're in the lead right now, the Lannisters. After the Lannisters move, it's now Stark's turn. They will resolve their last march order, which is a March +0 in White Harbor. They are going to move through their ship in the Narrow Sea into the Mountains of the Moon. And they will also leave behind a power token to remain control of the White Harbor. And back to us, we'll just move the ship out of Sea of Dorne into the East Summer Sea. Next up is Greyjoys, but they don't have any more march orders to resolve, so we'll skip the Greyjoy and move directly into the Tyrells. They have the March -1 in High Garden. They are going to move the footman units into Old Town, and the knight unit through the ship in the West Summer Sea into 3 towers. And now they also have a total of 2 strongholds, so I'm gonna just update the victory track there. All the march orders have now been resolved. We'll now move on to resolve Consolidated Power Order. Since the Baratheons and the Lannisters do not have any of the CP orders, we're gonna move ahead to the Stark. They are going to use the special Consolidated Power Order in Winterfell to muster 1 ship in the Silvern Sea, and they will update the footman units into a siege engine. Next up is our turn. We're also gonna use our special Consolidated Power Order to muster more units. And like I said before, we're going to muster a ship in the Sea of Dorne so that we have a lot of support around the land areas around the Sea of Dorne. And also allows our unit to travel more easily between the land areas using the ship transport. And as for the other point of mustering, we're going to put another footman units in Sunspear. The Greyjoys have 2 Consolidated Power Orders, one in the port and one in Pike. Normally, you should resolve these orders in turn order, one at a time, just like any other raid orders or march orders. but for the purpose of this video, I will resolve all the CP orders for the same house all together at once. So in this case, the Greyjoys will resolve their CP orders and get a total of 3 power tokens. And lastly, the Tyrells will resolve their CP order in Dornish Marches, and they will get a total of 2 power tokens from that. And that was it for round 1. We now move on to round 2, and starting with the Restro phase. So here's a Restro card, deck 1. I'm gonna flip it over and see what events we're gonna get, and it's a supply. We have to flip all 3 of the decks first before we solve their effects individually. So here's a deck 2, we got Clash of Kings. And finally, deck 3, we have, well, Lynx's Attack. Let's adjust the supply according to the number of lanes with the barrels each house's control. As you can see, the higher your supply track, the more the number of armies you can have is increased, and also the size of the individual armies will also be increased as well. So for the Baratheons, they still only have 2 barrels, that hasn't changed. The Lannisters, however, now have 3 barrels because they took over River Run. The Stark also now moved from 1 barrel into 2 barrels because of the Mountains of the Moon. Us Martells, we also have an additional barrel because we took Starfall and we left a power token in South Shore when we left it. The Greyjoys also have 3 barrels because they have Seaguard. And finally, the Tyrells also have 3 barrels because of the 3 towers that they conquered. And now we're going to resolve the second Westeros card, which is the Clash of Kings. We all bid our power tokens in all the influence tracks and try to get a higher position on the track if possible. Now looking at our power tokens, we only have 4 right now and we're tied with the Starks. So the Iron Throne track only determines the turn order, whereas the 15th track determines the ties in the battle. Both of these are not very important to us. I think we have to reserve all our 4 tokens and try to get as higher position on the King's Court track as we can. So in the first Iron Throne track, we the Martell player will just bid nothing. And then we'll see how other players bid in order to determine if we're gonna bid in the 15th track or not. But most likely, we're gonna reserve all 4 of tokens for the King's Court track. So as it turned out, nobody else bid for the Iron Throne track except for the Greyjoys and the Tyrells. Now, the Baratheon player who currently has the Iron Throne token must break the tie between the Greyjoys and the Tyrells, and also everybody else who bid at 0. And in this case, they have decided to make the Greyjoys the next holder of the Iron Throne track by placing them first on the Iron Throne track. The Baratheon player also broke ties between the Lannister, Stark, Martell, and themselves. And they decided to keep everything mostly the same, except they placed themselves at the dead last in the Iron Throne track instead. And now the Greyjoy player will receive the Iron Throne token instead. And these power tokens that they bidded will be discarded. Now moving on, we will now bid for the 15th track. And these are the available power tokens after the bidding for Iron Throne tracks. We still have 4 power tokens left, and we are going to continue with our strategy and not bid anything for the 15th track either. We're going to reserve all of our power tokens for the King's Court track bidding, because this track is the one that gives us more special orders, the Orders of the Stars. So now let's see what all the other houses have decided to bid on the 15th track. The Lannisters have bidded 2, which is the most in this bidding. So now they win the top position of the 15th track and receive the Valyrian Steelblade token. The Greyjoy and the Tyrells are tied, but Greyjoy has the Iron Throne token, so they get to break the ties between themselves and the Greyjoy, and also everybody else as well. The Greyjoys will obviously break tie in their own favor, and for everybody else, they will just remain in the same position as before. And these power tokens are now discarded. And now we will bid on the King's Court track, which is the last one of the influence tracks. looking at the available power tokens we have right now, things have changed quite a bit since the compared to the beginning of the bidding. And remember, the wildlings will attack with a strength of 2 immediately after the bidding, so we have to keep that in mind as well. If we don't want to be the lowest bidder against the wildlings attack, it's best that we reserve one of our power tokens, only bid 3. However, with a strength of 2 wildlings attack, it's fairly easy to assume that the other players will probably think the same and will also only bid 3. And in that case, if we bid all 4, then we'll have a very good chance of getting a very good position on the King's Court track. So with that in mind, I think we're going to go ahead and bid all 4 of our power tokens, and we're gonna give up on bidding for the wildlings attack. So as it turns out, most houses, except for the Lannisters, have bidded 4 power tokens. Now the Greyjoy is the one with the Iron Throne token right now, so they get to break the ties. And obviously they will want to place themselves first on the King's Court track. And the Lannister will not be the dead last because they bidded nothing, and they're the only house to do so. And now it's a matter of breaking the ties between the least 4 houses. And so we try to convince the Greyjoy players that the Martells are probably the farthest away from the Greyjoys and therefore pose the least threat to them. And we should be higher on the King's Court track because of that. And the Greyjoys agree, it makes sense to them. So they're gonna move us to the 2nd place. And they're also going to move Stark into the 5th place because they're relatively close to them. And the Tyrells will be in the 4th place, followed by the Baratheons. And now the Greyjoys will also receive the Messenger Raven token for being the first on the King's Court track. And of course, these power tokens are all discarded. And finally, we resolve the third Westeros event, which is the wildlings attack. Now the wildlings only have a strength of 2 right here. And now only the Baratheons have only 1 power token left, and the Lannister have all 3 power tokens left. And the Greyjoys are in a very good position right now because even though they have no power token, they are guaranteed to be not in the last position, not being the lowest bidder in this attack because everybody who bids 0, they can break the tie and to make sure somebody else will be the lowest bidder. But anyway, so we obviously will bid 0 because we have no more power tokens left. And we'll now see what each other players will bid. So the Lannister will bid 2 of their 3 power tokens, and the Baratheons will bid the last remaining power tokens. And that gives a total of 3 strength to the Night's Watch, which was more than enough to defeat the wildlings. So we now discard all the power tokens, and move the wildlings icon to 0 because they have been defeated. And we draw the top card of the wildling deck and see what kind of reward we'll give to the Lannisters. And we got a King Beyond the Wall. The highest bidder, which is the Lannisters, move his token to the top of the influence track of his choice, then take the appropriate dominance token. The Lannister player probably knew exactly what that card was because they used the Messenger Raven token in the previous round to determine to look at the top card on the wildlings deck, and that's why they bid it the way they bid it in the previous Clash of Kings. So now the obvious choice for them is to move to the top of the King's Court track, and everybody will slide down 1 position that way. And they will now take over the Messenger Raven token from the Greyjoys. And the wildling card will now go to the bottom of the wildlings deck. And now we move on to the planning phase for round 2, where we assign the orders in secret for all the houses. And now we have to assign our orders to our troops, but before I do that, I just want to say the Lannisters were doing really well in the Clash of Kings event just now. They have both the Valyrian Steel Blade token and also the Messenger Raven tokens. And thankfully, we're far away enough from them that we don't have to deal with them because they are a really formidable opponent right now. But I digress. Let's now look at our own situation. We still haven't done any diplomacy with the Baratheons or the Tyrells because I think they don't have any immediate threats to us right now because our positions are pretty solid at this time. we have a lot of troops in some sphere, so we want to move them out to spread them out, and so that we can assign more orders in the future rounds. So our order for some sphere will be a March +1 order. It doesn't really have to be a +1, but since I can have up to 2 Star Wars, I figure might as well. And the next one will play a support +1 in the Sea of Thorns, so that we can strengthen our defense in the East Summer Sea and also all the lane areas around the Sea of Thorn. As for the East Summer Sea, we'll just place a raid order because what we want to do is place a consolidated power token in Starfall to get more power tokens, because right now we have none. And hopefully the Tyrell player doesn't raid us from the West Summer Sea. And the raid order in our East Summer Sea is it's sort of an insurance in case they do raid us. And we'll see what happens when that happens. Alright, so let's take a look at what the other houses has placed on the board. After all the orders have been revealed, the Lannister now has a chance to use the Messenger Raven token. Looking at the board right now, the Lannisters are a little bit nervous because they have a consolidated power here, but the Greyjoy also have a raid order in the adjacent Ironman's Bay. So the Lannister asks about the Greyjoy, hey, what's up with the raid orders in the Ironman's Bay? And the Greyjoy was reassuring the Lannister that this raid order is just to ensure that there's no raid order in the River Run, because the Greyjoy also have a special consolidated power in Seaguard. They just want to make sure that consolidated power is safe, and that's why the raid orders is here to prevent any raid orders in the River Run. So the Lannister player was reassured by the Greyjoy player that they will discard the raid order in the Ironman's Bay as soon as they get a chance to. Of course, the Greyjoy can be lying too and raid the River Run consolidated power anyways, but it's up to the Lannister whether or not they want to believe the Greyjoy players, what they're telling them is the truth or not. And I think they're going to decide that to trust in the Greyjoy player and not to use the Messenger Raven token to swap out the order in the Golden Sound. And instead they will use the Messenger Raven token to look at the top card in the Wildlings deck. And they looked at it and decided to place on the top of the deck again. And now we move on to resolve the raid orders. And true to their words, the Greyjoy player decided to discard the raid order in Ironman's Bay. The only other raid order on the board is our own raid order in the East Summer Sea. There's no real valid targets around because there's no other support or raid orders, so we have to discard this raid order right here. We're now going to move on and resolve the march orders. Greyjoy should go first, but they actually didn't assign any march order this round. So we skip the Greyjoy and move on to Tyrells. They have 1 march +0 in the 3 towers. They're actually going to march their knight from 3 towers into Princess Pass. And that's not good news for us, because that's really close to our borders right there. Next is the Lannisters. They are going to resolve their march +0 in Harrenhal and moving the footmen into Blackwater. They're actually not going to leave a power token here. And as a result, they lose 1 castle and they are down to just 2 in total. The Starks are going next. They will resolve the march +0 order in Winterfell and move the siege engines through ship transport into the Eyrie. They have a combat strength of 4 because it's a castle in the Eyrie, +1 from the Mountains of the Moon support, and also a support from the Narrow Sea for a total of 6, just enough to take over the Eyrie. And Stark now have 2 castles and 1 stronghold, bringing the total up to 3 now. And now it's our turn. We only have 1 march order in Sunspear, and we're really annoyed by the Tyrells right now because they have marched into Princess Pass, which is a lane area that's really adjacent to a lot of our lane spaces in our territory. But there's really nothing we can do right now, but we're just gonna go ahead with our original plan and spread our units around so that they can do more useful things later down the road. And we can assign more different orders with different lane areas that we control. So for the march +1, we're going to march the knight into the Boneway and 1 of the footmen into the Ironwood? Something like that. But anyways, and because of that, we get another castle, bringing our total up to 3 again. Well, not again, but just the same as the Starks. Stark is the only player with any march order left this round, and they're just going to discard it right away without doing anything about it. After resolving all the march orders, we're going to go ahead and resolve the consolidated power orders. Starting with the Greyjoys, they will get 2 power tokens from Pike right there. And for the Sea Guard, they're going to muster a footman unit into it, and also a ship in the Iron Man's Bay. Next up are the Tyrells. They'll get 2 power tokens from Dornish Marches and 1 from the Old Town for a total of 3 power tokens. The Lannisters will get 2 power tokens from Stony Set, and for the River Run special consolidated power, they will muster 2 footman units. And since the Starks didn't assign any consolidated power order this round, we're gonna skip them and move to us, the Martells. And we only have 1 here in Starfall, and that will get us just 1 power token. Not nearly enough, but that's all we can get for now. And lastly, actually, for the Baratheons, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 power tokens in total. That's a pretty good return on investment for just placing 2 power orders, consolidated power orders. That was the end of round 2. Moving on to round 3, Westeros phase first. And in the first deck, we'll have a new card. Let's see what it is. And it's Mustering. And for deck 2, we had Clash of Kings last time. And this new event will be another Clash of Kings. Wow. And lastly, the Wild Winds attack was the last 3rd deck. And now we will have Put to the Sword. We will now resolve the first Westeros event, which is Mustering. And Greyjoy will get to go first. In the Sea Guard, they have 2 points of mustering. One of them will be used to build a ship in Iron Man's Bay, and the other one will be used to upgrade one of the footmen into a knight unit. And as for Pike, they are gonna build another ship in the port, and also upgrade the footman into a siege engine. They're just at the supply limit right now. The Tyrells will use the 2 mustering points in Old Town to muster 2 ships into the Red One Straits. And also for Highgarden, they're going to put 2 more footman units into play. Next up are the Lannisters. For River Run, they'll upgrade 2 of their footman units into 2 knight units. And for Lannisport, they're actually going to just muster 2 footman units right there. And for the Stark player, they're going to use the Eyrie to muster a ship into the Narrow Sea. And also from White Harbor, another ship into the Narrow Sea. And as for Winterfell, they'll put another ship into the Bay of Ice on the other side of the map, and a footman unit into Winterfell. So it's finally back to our turn. We have 4 points of mustering, 2 from the Stronghold here, and 2 from the Ironwood and the Starfall altogether. I think for the Sunspear, we're going to put another ship in the Sea of Thorn just to strengthen the support that we have in this area. And it can make the lands around it a lot more difficult to conquer from our opponents, and also make the East Summer Sea a lot more difficult to take over too. And for the other point of mustering, we're going to put another ship into the port so that we can get some extra consolidated power there to get some extra power tokens. As for the Starfall and Ironwood, we want to make sure we have enough strength to take over Princess Pass, because we really want that lane area. But we want to make sure we have enough units to spread out our lane as well. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna upgrade the footman units into a knight, and actually muster another footman units into Starfall. So that way we have some increased strength, but also enough units to spread out into the land. And last but not least, it's the Baratheons' turn. In Dragonstone, they are going to muster a footman unit, and also a ship in the port. They're going to muster another footman unit, and also another ship in the Blackwater Bay. And that's it for all the mustering. And now we move on to the second Westeros event, which is the Clash of Kings. Now we have to bid our power tokens for the positions on the influence track, starting with the Iron Throne track. And it kind of sucks for us because, or actually not just for us, for every other player as well. Because the last turn we just had Clash of Kings, and on top of that we also had a Wildlings attack. So we spent a lot of our power tokens in last round already, so not many of us have many power tokens left. Except for the Baratheon player, they somehow predicted this was gonna happen, so they collected a lot of power tokens. 5 of them, in fact, in just a single round. And Stark player is really in a bad position right now because they have absolutely nothing left for power token for bidding. So looking at the situation right here, King's Court track is probably the most important track for us right now, but even with just 1 power token, it's not very likely that we're gonna get any star orders. So we have 2 options. Either we save the power token and hope for that it can be used for the next upcoming Clash of Kings in the future, or we can bid it on the 15th track and hopefully we can outbid the Baratheons and the Tyrell players. But seeing how they have so many power tokens, it's not very likely that's gonna happen. But for the time being, I think it's pretty much guaranteed that we will bid nothing for the Iron Throne track because it's not worth wasting our only power token on the turn order. So now let's see what the other players have decided to bid. So as it turned out, nobody bidded anything for the Iron Throne track. So the Greyjoys who has the Iron Throne token now gets to break the tie between all the houses, and they're obviously gonna keep themselves in the first position. They are mostly gonna keep all the other positions the same, except for the Baratheons. They wanted to move them up to the 2nd position and slide everybody down, like so. Why they decided to do that, I have no idea, but that's what they can do because they have the Iron Throne token. And moving on to the bidding for 15th track, and here are the available power tokens for each houses. Again, Stark has 0, and I think we're actually gonna go ahead and bid our only power token onto the 15th track. We're probably not gonna outbid the Baratheons because they have so many. But I'm guessing the Tyrells will want to reserve all of their power tokens for the King's Court track. So we might as well try to take advantage of that and try to win over the 15th track against the Tyrells. So that if we do end up being in conflict with them, then we'll have a better chance of winning. So now let's take a look at what all the other players have decided to bid. And once again, we have some ties between the houses. And Greyjoy being the holder of the Iron Throne token, they now get to break the tie. And it's quite obvious they want to place the first on the 15th track, so they will do so. And the Lannister can go down to, oh well, it doesn't have to go down to 2nd, but anyway, so the Greyjoy actually also get the Valyrian Steelblade token as well. And us, the Martells, were tied with the Lannisters and the Baratheons, so we're pleading with the Greyjoy saying, you know, we're the farthest away from you on the map, we have no threat to you, just place us at the 2nd on the position, because the Baratheons are actually a little bit closer to the Greyjoys than we are. And the Greyjoys see the point and they agreed. So they're gonna place us on the 2nd on the track, and the Lannister on the 4th, and the Baratheons on the 3rd. Now for the Tyrell and Stark, they both didn't bid anything, so the Greyjoy needs to break the ties between them as well. And it doesn't really matter because they're all gonna be below Greyjoy, so they just leave it as it is right now. And all these power tokens are discarded. And now moving on to the bidding for King's Court track, we have no more power token left, and Stark has always been having 0 power tokens this far. And now it's up to the Greyjoy, the Lannister, and the Tyrell and Baratheons. Now we have to see what they want to bid for King's Court track. So everybody bidded all of their power tokens except for the Greyjoy. They have 1 power token left and decided not to bid against the King's Court track. And it kind of makes sense because now they are tied with Stark and us, Martells, and then because they have the Iron Throne token, they can break the tie. So that pretty much guarantees them with at least 1 star on the 4th position. The Baratheon will go up to the top spot for sure because they bidded the most power token. And now they will receive the Messenger Raven token that they can use in the upcoming planning phase. And the next up is the Tyrells, followed by the Lannisters. And again, between us and the Stark, it doesn't really matter because neither of us will get any power tokens, any special orders at all. And all these power tokens now will be discarded. And last but not least, the 3rd Westeros card, Put to the Sword. So whoever holds the Valyrian Steelblade token, which right now is the Greyjoy player, they get to decide if for this upcoming planning phase, No March +1 can be played, or no defense orders can be played, or there's no restrictions on the orders. And looking at the board right now, the Greyjoy player has to make that decision, and they're announcing that, okay, now this upcoming round, no defense orders will be played. And now, with that in mind, we can move on to the planning phase for round 3. Okay, so let's now look at our map and for assigning orders to our troops here. I have to say the last mustering has allowed us to have a lot more units compared to before, so we have more flexibility now. But let's do the easy ones first. I think for Sunspear, we're just gonna consolidate power, both in the land and the port, so we have more power tokens, so that we have a better chances at bidding at the better positions for the upcoming Clash of Kings. It is only the 3rd round, so the chances are you probably will come up in the future. And also for the Sea of Dawn, as usual, the support there will guarantee a lot of support in the lane areas around it and also in the East Summersea. Unfortunately for the ship in East Summersea, because I cannot play any defense order this round, so instead we can just play a raid order for just in case we actually need it or not. Now, we talked with the Baratheon player, and then they have told us that they have no interest in coming to South, so they don't have to worry about. We don't have to worry about them, and that's what they've been telling us. And we tend to agree. I mean, if they do come South, our defense is pretty solid with 2 ship support from the Sea of Dawn and also a ship here. And now for the Tyrell players, we try to ask them to vacate the Princess Pass, and they have agreed to do that. In fact, they told us that they will move the Knight unit in Princess Pass to 3 towers in the upcoming season, and that's good news for us. Now we just want to spread the units around a little bit more. So I think what we're gonna do is move the Knight unit into Princess Pass and moving the footmen into the Ironwood, so that we still occupy the castles, and if another mustering comes out, then we can upgrade the footmen units into something stronger. So let's do that. So we're gonna put a March +0 to take over the Princess Pass, and March -1 to move around the footmen units. And for the Boneway, I think we'll just put a support here, just in case the Tyrells lied to us and then they weren't gonna vacate the Princess Pass. Alright, so I think that's about it. Let's take a look at what other players have decided to place in their orders. And here we go, and shocker, shocker, the Tyrells told us they were gonna move out of Princess Pass, but that's not the order to move your units, that's just a raid order. So the Tyrells have betrayed us in a sense, so now we are sort of officially at war with each other right now. What we can do is, before I get ahead of ourselves, the Baratheon players who have the Messenger Raven token can use it right now to either swap out an order or look at the top card of the Wildlings deck. And they're actually gonna do that. They're gonna look at the top card in the Wildlings deck, and they take a look at it, and they decided to put it on the bottom of the deck. And with the Messenger Raven out of the way, we can now start resolving the raid orders, starting with the Greyjoy player, but they didn't place any raid orders, so the next up will be House Baratheon. The Baratheon's raid order has 2 valid targets. One is the raid orders down south, which is ours, and one is the support order up north in the Narrow Sea, that belongs to the Starks. Now, they don't really care for our raid order because it doesn't really affect them in any way. But the support order in the Narrow Sea can really help the Starks to march their land troops down south to Clock Point. And that's something the Baratheon does not want. Even though the Stark player is now trying to convince the Baratheon, no, the support order in the Narrow Sea is to help themselves to take over Mo Cailin, which is empty right now, but they might have a little bit of trouble with the Greyjoys. But the Baratheon wants to play it safe, so they don't believe the Starks. They are going to go ahead and use the raid order in the Shipbreaker Bay and raid the support in the Narrow Sea. Next up are the Tyrells, and it comes to no surprise, they're going to raid our support in the Boneway. They are being a real traitor now. The Lannister's raid order has no valid target, so it's removed right away. And Stark's raid order has no valid target either, so this will get removed right away as well. Lastly, it's our raid order. Our only valid target right now is the raid order in the West Summersea by the Tyrell player. And why not? Even though it doesn't make much of a difference, we're just gonna speed up the process of the game by just raiding their raid orders. Otherwise, they were just gonna discard it anyways. Now we move on to resolve the march order, starting with the Greyjoys. And by looking at the way they place their orders, it's obvious they are going to break their alliance or the peaceful treaty with the Lannisters, and the Lannisters know that. So they are going to march 2 of the ships from the Ironman's Bay into the Sunset Sea. And the one remaining ship, they are going to attack the Golden Cell with the March +1 order. So for the time being, there's no support orders around, so it's just 1, 2 of the Greyjoy combat strength versus just 1 from the Lannisters. They have now each picked a house card from their hand in secret, and are going to reveal it simultaneously. Okay, so the Lannister knew there's no way they can win the combat, so they just picked the lowest card possible. And the effects of the card will only work if you win the combat, so this is irrelevant in this case. Now for Asha Greyjoy, they have combat strength of 1 versus a 0, so the Greyjoy will definitely win the combat for sure. But the effect says, if you're not being supported in this combat, which that's the case here, this card gets 2 sword icons and 1 fortification icons. As a result, the Greyjoys will win the combat and get into the Golden Sound. The Lannister ship doesn't get to retreat because it is destroyed by the Asha's swords on the house card. And their respective house cards are discarded. Next up are the Baratheons. They are going to resolve their only march order, which is a March +1 here, by moving a footman unit into Claw Point and the other one into Blackwater. So now they are gonna fight against the Lannisters. And looking at the board right now, the combat strengths of the Baratheons are 2, 1 from the footman, 1 from the order. But for the Lannister, they have 1 from the footman in Blackwater and 2 from the knight and 1 from the support order in Stony Sept. So for a total strength of 4, it's 4 versus 2. They will now each pick a house card in secret and reveal them simultaneously. And they have chose Patchface and Jaime Lannister. So looking at the combat strengths right now, it's 2 versus 0. So the Lannister will definitely win this combat. And because of the sword icon, the footman unit is actually destroyed. Now let's look at the effect of the Patchface card, which says at the end of the combat, you can look at the opponent's hand and discard 1 house card of your choice. So now the Baratheon player looks at the Lannister hand and they are going to decide to just discard Tywin Lannister because they are the highest combat value cards in their hand right now. The effect just says if they win the combat, they get 2 power tokens. But that's not a big deal. They just want to get rid of their highest number card in their hand. So this card gets discarded from Lannister's house card hand. And of course, these 2 cards are also discarded after being used in a combat. And of course, the support order doesn't get discarded. It remains there for the entire of the game, the entirety of the round. And now it's Tyrell player's turn. They only have 1 march order, the March +1. They are going to move the footman unit into the Reach, and also the other footman unit through the ship trans route into the Arbor down here. And because of that, they gained another additional castle, so they're now up to 3 castles and strongholds in total. And now for the Lannister player, they are going to resolve their March +0 first by moving 2 of the knights into Stony Sept. That's a really strong support area for them now. And the remaining footmen will go into Harrenhal. They will not leave a power token here because they cannot because they don't have any power tokens left anyways. And because they conquer Harrenhal, they are now up to 3 castles and strongholds in total again. And now for the Stark's order, march order, they only have 1 in Winterfell. They're going to move the footman unit into Carhold and the knight into Moat Cailin. And they now have a total of 4 castles and strongholds. And now finally, it's our turn. We have 2 march orders, and this one will definitely attack the Princess Pass. But before I do that, I'm gonna just resolve the March -1 first, and move the footman unit into Ironwood. And next turn, we can attack the Princess Pass. And the Martells has no support around it, and no other march orders left. So we are pretty much in a very good position to take over Princess Pass. And now back to the Greyjoys. They have 2 more march orders. They are going to resolve the +0 first by marching both ships into the Ironman's Bay. Next up are the Baratheons, followed by the Tyrells, but none of them have any march orders left. So now we go straight to Lannister with the March +1 order. they have decided they're going to move one footman unit into the zero marches and one into the river run. So they're really spreading out in that area now. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 barrels. Wow. So if the supply comes out, they have a lot of barrels to work with. And Stark has no more march order left. So they're skipped and now it's back to us Martells. So we're gonna use this march +0 order and we're gonna move from Ironwood the Knight into Princess Pass, like we discussed before. So right now it's an even combat strength of 2 versus 2 because there's no support orders around the area. But we are actually on higher on the 15th track than the Tyrells. So if we are tied, then we'll win the tie and win the battle. So now we have to pick a house card in secret. But before we do that, we get to look at your opponent's house cards. This is actually public information. You can get to look at them anytime you want, except for when they pick the card in secret. So in order for us to win the battle, we have to pick a card with a combat value that's equal to the Tyrells or more. I don't think the Tyrells will play the 3 and the 4s because they are really good for attacking, but not so much for defending. Especially this card, because it's good if we're attacking with a footman unit, but in this case we're not, so it's no point using that. And now, we have to be real careful because their 2s have a lot of sword icons. So we have to play at least a 2, I think, in order to match them so that they don't get to use their sword icons here. Their 1s and 0s are just like fortifications, and the 0 will discard an order around us, but there's no order, so I don't think they're gonna play that. So chances are they're probably gonna play 2s or 1s. I'm guessing they'll play their 1s because there's a fortress here which will block our swords. I'll show you my cards right now. So with our cards, we're probably not gonna use these because we're thinking the Tyrell players will not use their 3 and 4s. And even if the Tyrell's players use their 3 and 4s, their 3 and 4s have no sword icons. So at the worst case scenario, our knight will just retreat to somewhere else. And then because now the Tyrells have lost one of their high cards, they are a little bit more weak the next time they get attacked. So we can just come back and attack them again. And that's something they do not want to happen. So chances are they will not use their 3 and 4s. And there's no reason that we will use ours either. Instead, we really have to use our 2s because if we use our 2s, then we're pretty much guaranteed to tie with the Tyrells. And we don't have to be afraid of their sword icons because the sword icons will only work if you win the combat. We can use our 1s too, but there's no fortifications. So I'm guessing the Tyrells will probably use their 1s because they have fortress on their 1s to prevent their to cancel out our swords when they win the combat. Because if they use their 2s, they at most will just tie with us and still lose the combat. And their 2s have only sword icons but no fortress, so they cannot cancel out their swords and their knight unit will die. So I think we're gonna go ahead and use Dark Star. Doesn't really matter if we use Obara Sen or Dark Star. We're just gonna use Dark Star for this combat. And then we'll see what the Tyrell player will use. And now we all refill our cards simultaneously, and indeed they use their 1s with the fortress. So we win the combat, and the fortress will cancel out our sword icon, so there will be no casualties. And these cards are now both discarded. So we have taken over the Princess Pass, and the Tyrell player will now retreat. They can retreat either to Dornish Marchers, 3 towers, and that's about it. So they have decided to retreat to 3 towers, and their units will now be routed, standing out like that. And lastly, the final march order is the Greyjoys March -1. They're going to move their footman unit through the ship transport into Flint's Finger right here. And then gain a castle as a result of that. So they have 3 in total right now. And now it is time to consolidate power. The Greyjoy has 1 in pike, so they will get 2 power tokens from that. And for the Baratheons, they'll get 2 power tokens here and 1 from the port, for a total of 3 power tokens. And for the special consolidated power, they're gonna put another ship into the Shipbreaker Bay and upgrading the footman units into a siege engine. The Tyrells will get 2 power tokens from Dornish Marches. And for the special consolidated power in the Old Town, they're going to muster a knight unit. Stark will have 2 from the Eyrie and 1 from the Mountains of the Moon for a total of 3 power tokens. Oh, by the way, I skipped the Lannisters because they did not have any consolidated power orders placed on the board. And finally, it's our turn. We have 2 from Sunspear and 1 from the port for a total of 3 power tokens as well. And moving on to round 4. Let's look at the Westro cards. So last time we had the mustering. This time we will have a Thorn of Blades. So whoever has the Iron Thorn token will decide what to do between these options. But now we have one Wildling icon in the first deck. And the second deck we have Clash of Kings. Hopefully not again. Well, maybe it's a good for Game of Thrones. So we'll get power tokens this time. And the third deck we have Put to the Sword last time, and this time we will have Reigns of Autumn. March +1 orders cannot be played during this planning phase. And also we have a Wildlings icon we have to take care of first. So Greyjoy now has an interesting decision to make. So looking at the Thorn of Blades card, they're definitely not gonna choose the first option, which is update supply, because their neighbors, the Lannisters and Starks, will both benefit from it, especially the Lannisters. They currently have only 4 barrels, but if they update the supply, they'll go all the way up to 6. And that's definitely not good news for Greyjoy. And same with Stark, they only have 2 barrels right now, but if they update the supply, it'll go up to 3. And for the second option, where they muster troops, the Greyjoys doesn't feel like that's beneficial for them either, because not only can they muster more troops, but so can their neighbors and everybody else. So they've decided to do C. This card has no effect. And now we'll move on to a Game of Thrones, where everybody collect the power token for each power icon printed on the areas they control. So looking at Greyjoy first, they have 1 in Pike and 1 in Seaguard, so they will gain a total of 2 power tokens. And looking at the Lannisters, they have 1 in Harrenhal, Stony Sept, and Riverrun, so that's a total of 3 power tokens. Again, you're supposed to do these in turn order, but for the sake of this video, I'll just do them at random orders. It doesn't really make much of a difference anyways. The Tyrells have 1 in the Hot Arbor and 1 in Dornish Marches for a total of 2 power tokens. And for us, the Martells, we have 1 in Princess Pass, we just got it, and the Boneway, Sunspear, and also a ship in the port. So that's a total of 4 power tokens. The Baratheons has 1 in Kingswood, 2 in King's Landing, and 1 in Dragonstone for a total of 4 power tokens. And finally, the Stark have 1 in the Eyrie, 1 in Winterfell, and 1 in Carhall for a total of 3 power tokens. And with that, that's all the events in the Westeros phase. We'll go on ahead and do the planning phase for round 4. And the restriction now is no March +1 order can be played this round. So let's plan the orders for our troops. Let's do the easy ones first. We'll just play a consolidated power in Sunspear to get more power tokens. So the next time we bid for the influence tracks, we can have a better shot at getting better position on the Kingscourt track. We're also gonna play another support in the Sea of Dorne as usual. For the East Summer Sea, there's really not much you can do but defend here. And thanks for the Reigns of Autumn event card from Westeros phase. We don't have to worry about the March +1 order being used against us. I guess the soldiers don't like to march too much when it's raining constantly, and which makes sense, I suppose. And looking at this area here, I think we want to play a little bit more defensively now because we're really not in a very good position in terms of the Kingscourt track, and our troops are not very numerous right now. We barely have enough troops to occupy these land areas. So we're gonna place another support in here, Ironwood, so that we can support all these areas, and the defend in Starfall so that we can fend off any attacks coming from the Tyrell players. We're definitely at war with Tyrells now because we've been fighting over the Princess Pass. The Baratheons, so far we've been able to keep everything on the peaceful side. I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon. So we're gonna assume that for now. I mean, I could ask a Baratheon player, but what they say and what they do, it doesn't really mean much. but the Tyrell so far will be fighting over Princess Pass, so we're definitely not at good terms with each other. I want to hold off. I want to be able to hold Princess Pass. So, but then I have no more defense orders. I mean, I could put one here too. Let's see here. I think I'm gonna put. I'll leave the defense token in the East Summer Sea, and I'll play a raid order, just in case there's any support order here, or even better, consolidate power there. Then I can raid them. And I'll place a March +0 in the Bone Way, so in case I do fall, then I can just march in again. And I think that's what we're gonna do for this term, or this round. Alright, so let's take a look at what the other houses have placed for their orders. Okay, that doesn't look too bad, but we're gonna start with the Greyjoy player first and resolve their raid orders up north. There's no valid target for the raid order in the Golden Sound, so this is discarded right away. And next up, the Baratheons. They have 2 raid orders, but only this one has actually 2 valid targets, the raid orders in Blackwater and the consolidated power in Harrenhal. So they can either raid the Lannister and make them lose 1 power token, and the Baratheon will gain 1 more power token. But the more logical thing to do would be to raid the raid order in Blackwater, because this raid order can raid their consolidated power order in King's Landing, and they don't want that to happen. So they're going to use the raid order to raid the Blackwater. And I might as well remove this raid order in Kingswood because there's no valid target for it. Next up is the Tyrell player. They only have 1 raid order, but they also don't have any valid target over here, so this will just get discarded. The Lannisters had only 1 raid order in Blackwater, which was raided by the Baratheons. And the Stark player does not have any raid orders, so now it's back to us. We are going to use the raid order to raid the support in the Dornish marches. First up, for the march order are the Greyjoys. They are gonna resolve their March +0 in the Sunset Sea and move 1 ship and only 1 ship into the Bay of Ice. They have started the invasion up north against the Starks. So now we have 1 combat strength from the Greyjoy and 1 from the Stark ship, and plus the defense order, which is a +1. Now they will each choose the house cards in secret, and they have done so, and they will reveal them simultaneously. So the Stark has Catelyn Stark, which doubles the defense value of the defense order. So that's essentially a +2 now, up there in the Bay of Ice. But the Stark sends Theon Greyjoy, which is kind of a surprise because people usually send the Victorian Greyjoy. Hopefully you'll see that card later. But the Theon's ability only works when he's defending an area of a castle or stronghold, so this can pretty much be ignored. So it's 2 against 0. So Greyjoy have a total combat strength of 3, and so does Stark actually, 1, 2, 3. But the Greyjoys will win the tie because they're higher on the 15th track, which you can actually see here. So these 2 house cards are both discarded, and the Stark ship can only retreat into the port in Winterfell. And this defense +1 order is discarded, and so is the March +0. Baratheon was up next, but they didn't place any march orders this round, so it's skipped them, and we are going to Tyrells right now. They have decided to move the March +0 first, and moving a knight unit into High Garden. And they're gonna move the footmen into 3 towers with their knight there. They're also gonna leave behind a power token to keep control of the old town, even though there's no units there. The Lannister player will go next. They only have 1 March +0 in 0 marches, and they are just gonna discard it without moving anything. Now it's the Stark player's turn. They are going to resolve the March -1 and moving 2 of their ships from the Narrow Sea into the Severn Sea. They are not in a very good position right now because the Greyjoys just attacked them up north and took over the Bay of Ice. Now they have a very good, easy access to Winterfell directly. So that's something that the Stark does not like at all. Now back to us. We only have 1 march order here, and I know I said that I want to use this in case they take over Princess Pass, but there's no way they are able to do that right now because they only have a knight and a footman in 3 towers, and with March -1, it might as well just be a knight, and the footman doesn't have any combat strength because of the -1 in the order. I have a knight here and also a support here, so essentially that's a combat strength of 3. So I don't need to worry about than overpowering me in Princess Pass anyways. But looking at Dawnish Marches, it's pretty vulnerable this turn right now. So I can really march from my knight from the Boneway into Dawnish Marches. And I will have a 2 versus 1 advantage in terms of combat strength. And also I'm higher on the 15th track than the Tyrell players. So if we end up with the tie, then I will win the tie automatically. So let's do that. We're gonna march the knight into Dawnish Marches with the march +0 order. We're not gonna leave any power tokens here because we have enough areas with power icons printed already. We don't really need to leave a power token there. This area is not really all that important anyways. So let's look at Tyrell's cards for now. So these are the cards they have remaining. I don't think they're gonna play the 3s and the 4s, just because if they do that, then any battles in the future will leave them very vulnerable because they don't have any high cards left. So I think they're gonna play most likely Marjorie Tyrell because of the fortress icon. Because if they play the 2, and even though it has a sword icon, right now they're behind by 1 combat strength. So even with the 2 plus the 1 footman, it's only 3 combat strengths. As long as I play a 1 with my knight, we tie in combat strength at the strength of 3. But then I will win because I'm higher on the 15th track. So I think more likely they will try to preserve their troops by playing the fortress icon here, so that the footman can actually retreat and not die. But that's what I think anyways. They may completely surprise us by playing like a 4 or something. And now let's look at our own house cards. We could play 3 and 4s too, but then again, why bother? I mean, even if the Tyrell player played the 3 and 4s, the worst case scenario is my knight will just retreat back, because the Tyrell players 3 and 4s do not have any sword icons. It's their 2s that they have sword icons. So, and even if the Tyrell play their 2, like I said, I can just play a 1 and then I will still beat them, right? So, and I think they are more likely play their 1 with the fortress icon, which means I can probably play my Doran Martel right now. So I will still have a combat strength of 2, because it's 2 plus 0 is 2. And if they play their Marjorie Tyrell, which is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, I still win. And also I can knock them down on the King's Court track. And they're currently on the 2nd position on the King's Court track. So if they get knocked down to the bottom, then I will move up 1 space, which means I'll have at least 1 star order to play in the future rounds. Assuming there's no Clash of Kings coming out in the next Retro phase, so hopefully not. The only danger of this is if they do play a 2 with the sword, then my knight will die because I will lose the combat. But I don't think the Tyrells will risk that. They will probably want to preserve their troops by playing their 1s with the fortress. So let's take a gamble here and choose to play Doran Martel and see what happens. And now we have chosen our house cards and we'll flip it. And yes, we were right, they chose Marjorie Tyrell. So we still win the combat because it's now 2 versus 2. 1 from the footman in the Tyrell and 1 from the card, but it's 2 of knight and 0 from Doran Martel. So we win, and both of these cards are discarded. And the Tyrells have decided to retreat the footman into Old Town, and it becomes routed like that. And thanks to our Doran Martel house card, we now get to choose one of these 3 tracks to move the Tyrell players all the way to the bottom. So the obvious choice would be the King's Court track, because like I said, everybody will move up. And we actually get 1 star this in the future rounds, so that's pretty good for us. And back to the Greyjoys again, they have a march -1 in Pike. They are going to actually march both the Siege Engine and the Knight unit. Not to Winterfell, but to the Stony Shore for now. And this is now resolved. Again, the Baratheon has no march order this round, so we skip them and go directly to the Tyrells. They are going to resolve the march -1 down here and move the knight from 3 towers to back to High Garden. And Stark now has the last march order of the round because the Lannister and ourselves, the Martells, don't have any more march orders. They are going to move from the Mountains of the Moon and leave it behind a power token, go back to White Harbor. With all the march orders being resolved, we now move on to resolving the consolidated power order. So the Greyjoy have 2 power tokens from Seaguard, and also for the special consolidated power here, they're actually gonna put a new ship into the Bay of Ice. So they have 2 ships over there right now. And now for Baratheons, they have 2 power tokens from Dragonstone and 1 from the port, for a total of 3 power tokens. And for the special consolidate over in King's Landing, they'll muster another knight unit into there. The Tyrells only have 1 consolidated power in the Arbor, so they will get 2 power tokens from that. The Lannisters have 2 power tokens from Harrenhal, and that's all they're gonna get. And the Stark gets 2 from the Eyrie, and another 2 from Carhol, for a total of 4 power tokens. And lastly, we get 2 from Sunspear and 1 from the port in Sunspear for a total of 3 power tokens. And that's the end of round 4, moving on to round 5. Let's see what events we have in the Westeros phase. We had a Throne of Blades last time, and this time we will get mustering. So there's no choice now, everybody has to muster more units, which can be good for some, not so good for others. So we had Game of Thrones last time for the deck too, and let's look at the card we're gonna get this round. Dark Winds, Dark Words, and we have to resolve that Wildlings icon. And finally, let's see what we have for the third deck. Oh, the most evil card of the game, Web of Lies. Support orders cannot be played during this planning phase, and also another Wildlings icon. So we will now resolve the Mustering Westeros event. The Greyjoys will go first. In Pike, they were gonna muster a siege engine. In Seaguard, they will muster another knight unit. And finally, in Flint's Finger, they will upgrade the footman into a knight unit. They already have 6 ships on the board, so they cannot muster any more ships. Now for the Baratheons, they will muster a knight unit in King's Landing and upgrade the footman in Cracklaw Point into a knight unit. Unfortunately for them, the stronghold in Dragonstone is wasted because they cannot muster anything else without breaking the supply limit. For the Tyrells, they've decided to upgrade the footman in the Reach to obviously just another knight unit. And they're also gonna get another knight unit in Highgarden. And for the Old Town, they'll get a ship in the port and also another footman in Old Town. And now Lannisters, they have decided to upgrade the footman in Harrenhal into a knight. And they'll get another knight unit into River Run. And for Lannisport, they'll put a ship into the port and also a footman into the Lannisport. And now for Stark, they will put a footman into the Eyrie. And they'll upgrade the footman in White Harbor into a knight. They'll put a knight into Winterfell and another footman into Moat Cailin. And finally, it's our turn. Well, for Sunspear, let's see. We want to put another ship into the Sea of Thorn. So that's like because this is like unraidable support in the Sea of Thorn that can support a lot of land areas around it. And I'm gonna upgrade the footman into a siege engine. It's always handy to have a siege engine lying around somewhere, especially when we have so many ships around. We can transport this siege engine to pretty much all the castles around here. So for example, if the Tyrell decided to attack Starfall, then we can just march the siege engine from here and directly attack Starfall and take it back right away. And for, let's see, I think for, what are we gonna do? We're going to put a footman here. No, we're gonna upgrade the footman into a knight and put another footman into Ironwood. I could have upgraded both footmen into knights, but then I have so few units to work with. It's hard to spread out into the land. And conversely, if I got a lot of footmen, then they're kind of too weak, and my forces will be too spread out. So we sort of met halfway. We upgraded one of them into a knight, and the other one into we got a new footman instead. So now the Baratheon player who holds the Messenger Raven token has to resolve the second Westeros card, which is Dark Winds and Dark Words. So they get to decide if basically we have Clash of Kings again or Game of Thrones again. Either we bid for the influence track, or we collect power tokens, or we just do nothing. And looking at the influence track up there, they are pretty happy at where they are. They are second on the Iron Throne track, the first in the King's Court track, obviously, and also third on the 15th track. They're only lower on the 15th track next to Greyjoy, which is really far away from them. They probably will never fight in this game, and also to us. But then we've been having a relatively peaceful agreement between us and the Baratheons. So the Baratheon players are not too worried about it. So they're just gonna end up choosing the last option, which is no effect, because that's probably the best for the Baratheon players right now. And finally, the third card is just Web of Lies, which is probably the most evil card in the entire game, because you cannot play any support orders. And with that in mind, we're gonna go ahead and start the planning phase for round 5. So let's look at our map right here and think about what orders we are going to assign for our troops this round. The Web of Lies, I think, is probably the most evil card in the entire game, because you cannot play support orders, meaning a lot of places where you would normally unable to conquer, now you have a shot at it because the opponent cannot play support order to help defend that particular place. Conversely, it's true that, for example, I've always been using support in Sea of Thorns so that our East Summer Sea is pretty secure. But now I cannot do that. So either Tyrell or Baratheon can both attack and take over East Summer Sea, and then our land area will become very vulnerable. And so obviously we're at war with the Tyrells, but the Baratheons, we have to just trust their word that they promise us not to come down here, and we do the same. We don't go up there to their Shipbreakers Bay. But then again, without support, these promises are just empty promises until we reveal the orders and see what each player actually intends to do. And therefore, I think this is one of the most evil card in the entire game. But anyways, we just have to deal with it. So again, the sea areas are really important. We want to make sure that we are not these areas are not lost, because once it's lost, it's really hard to gain back, and then your land areas become extremely vulnerable to land unit attacks. So I think we're gonna place +1 here to strengthen the defense. And thanks to the Doran Martell card we played last round, we actually have access to 1-star order now. So we're gonna do that in the Sea of Thorn. In case that part is lost, then we can just launch the ship in there to take it back. And also, we also have the Arian Martell, which prevents the attacking troops from taking over the land area anyways. So even if we lose the land area, then we can prevent the opponent from occupying that area, and we'll be able to take it back just by marching some of our units back into that area again. So this is a pretty powerful card, I think, and definitely gonna be useful in this situation right here. In terms of Sunspear and the port, we're just gonna do the usual consolidate power. I thought about placing a march order in Sunspear so that we can march the siege engine to, say, Starfall in case the Tyrells attack us. But we don't have to do it this turn. I mean, if the Tyrells do attack Starfall, it will be pretty easy for us to put a march order here next turn, provided that we still control the East Summer Sea, so that we can use the ship to transport our siege engine all the way around to Starfall in one move. So we're probably not in a hurry to do that right now. And now for the Princess Pass and Dornish Marches, we're hoping that we can hold the Dornish Marches so that the Tyrells don't take it back. And we're just gonna place a March -1 in Starfall, just so that we can strengthen the defense in Princess Pass right here. And then we're gonna place a March +0 in case Dornish Marches fall. If in case we lose Dornish Marches, then we can march another knight unit to take it back that way. And that leaves us with Ironwood, which I don't really have any useful orders to place right there because we cannot place support. And playing defense here, well, I don't have any more defense orders, and I don't have any more consolidate power. All I have left is raid order, which is gonna be discarded right away anyways. But anyway, so that's a lot of thought process going through that because the situation here without support is really tricky, and therefore it took a little bit more time to think about what we should do. But anyway, so we've done placing the orders. Let's take a look at what the other houses have planned for themselves as well. So it seems like the Tyrells are playing rather defensively, except for that March -1 here. And they're not attacking the sea area right here, so that's good. And the Baratheons have kept their word and they placed a defense order there instead of the march order right there. Now the Baratheon player can use their Messenger Raven token to either swap an order or look at the top card of the Wildling deck. And they have decided to use it to look at the Wildlings deck right here. And after taking a look at it, they have decided to place it on the bottom of the deck. Now moving on to resolve the raid orders, the Baratheons will use the special raid order to get rid of the defense order in Lennoxport. Baratheon does not have any raid orders, so skip over to the Tyrell player. They do have 2 raid orders, one which is not valid because there's no relevant targets around it, so we can discard this right away. And now they do have a raid order here and they can raid the consolidated power in Kingswood. But they're looking at the March +1 from the Baratheons, and in fact the Baratheon player is threatening the Tyrell player saying, we should be peaceful, otherwise it's gonna be ugly for the both of us. So it's trying to pressure the Tyrells into discarding the raid order instead of pillaging, I think that's what it's called, instead of raiding the consolidated power here. And the Tyrell player thinking they already have the Martells, which is us. They already have us to deal with. They don't want to make another enemy, so they decided to discard the raid order in the Reach. Next up is the Lannisters. They only have the raid order in the port, which is invalid, and there's no valid targets around, so we're just gonna discard this right away. Stark has 2 raid orders, one in Mo Cailin, one in the port up in Winterfell. This has no valid target, so we can discard that right away. And the one up in Winterfell, in the port area, they are just gonna raid the raid order in Bay of Ice, which just speed up the process a little bit, otherwise it doesn't really make a difference. And of course, our own raid order has no valid target, so we're just gonna discard it right away. Now moving on to resolve the march orders, the Greyjoys will resolve their March +1 first, moving both knights into Lennoxport. And they are going to leave behind a power token in Seaguard. So the combat strength is now, let's see here. The Lannisters have 2 from the garrison and 1 from the footmen, so for a total of 3 combat strength. The Greyjoy have 4 from the knights and 1 from the order, so it's 5 versus 3. And they will now each pick a house card in secret, simultaneously reveal them. So let's see here. Greyjoy has a total of 2, 4, 6, and the Lannister have 2, 4, 5. So Greyjoy wins, but the sword icon on deck mark Cleftjar is cancelled by the fortress here. Now both of these house cards are discarded, and the Lannister has lost the stronghold in Lennoxport. They have chosen, or really they can only retreat this footman into 0 marches. That's the only available place for them to retreat. And this garrison token in Lennoxport is now destroyed. The ship in the port is also destroyed because the Lannister no longer controls the port here. And now the Greyjoy have 1 more stronghold and the Lannister has 1 less stronghold. Next up are the Baratheons. They are also going to take advantage of the Lannisters being so weak right now due to the lack of support order. They will march all 3 of the night units into Blackwater with the March +1 order. They are going to leave behind a power token in King's Landing. So now we have 2, 4, 6, 7 combat strengths from the Baratheons versus just 1, 2, 3 from the Lannisters. They will each now pick a house card in secret, And then we'll now refill them simultaneously. So it's Tyrion Lannister versus Melisandre. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce that girl's name actually, but whatever. Okay, now the Lannister has decided to use Tyrion's ability, which says you can cancel the opponent's house card and return to his hand, and then he had to choose a different house card to play. So this card will now be returned to Baratheon's player's hand, and they cannot choose a different card. So instead, the Baratheon chose this guy, and the Texty ability is not very useful right now because nobody is being supported in this combat. And so with the combat strength of 1 versus Tyrion's 1, the Baratheon obviously has the victory. So both of these house cards are discarded. The Lannister has to retreat the footmen. The only valid area for them to retreat is now in Harrenhal, and they are routed. And the Baratheon now take over Blackwater. Now it's the Tyrell's turn. They are going to actually resolve the March -1 order first. They are going to move just 1 knight into 0 marches. Because of the -1 in the march order, the knight only provides 1 combat strength. However, this footman is routed, so does not contribute any combat strength in this combat right here. So it's actually a 1 versus 1 situation right now. There's only 2 cards in Lannister's hand right now. It's a 1 and a 3, and the 3 has 3 throw icons, so they have to choose one of these 2 cards to play. But they have to do that in secret nonetheless. So here we go. And we refill them simultaneously, and it's Mace Tyrell. Now, it says, immediately destroy one of your opponent's attacking or defending footman units. So the Tyrell will immediately destroy the footman in 0 marches, right there. And now it's just 1 versus 0. And with 4 versus 3 is obviously Tyrell's victory. Both of these cards are now discarded. And this routed footman cannot retreat anymore, so it's also destroyed. Finally, the Lannister's player's turn. Poor Lannister, they lost so much in in a short span of time. So let's see how they are gonna rebound. There's really not much they can do because they only have 1 house card left, and it's only a combat strength of 1. But after the next combat though, their house card will refresh. So they have to think real careful of what they want to do. So they have decided to march 1 knight into the river run and 2 of the knights into 0 marches. They are not going to leave a power token in Stony Set. So looking at the combat situation in the 0 marches, we have 2 from Tyrell and that's it. And 2, 4, 5 from the Lannisters. And like I mentioned, even though they were selecting secret, Lannister only has 1 house card left, and that's this one. And the Tyrells, they have several options, but even if they play the highest card, which is a 3, there's no match against the 1 from the Lannister. So instead, they're going to pick a 2 here, Randall Tardy. So in the end, the Tyrell have a total combat strength of 4, whereas the Lannister have 6. And both of these house cards are now discarded. The Tyrell player will now need to retreat. They are going to just retreat back to High Garden, and it's become routed. And the good news for Lannister is that their house cards are now refreshed. Except for the last card they used, they got every other cards back in their hands now. Next up is a Stark player. Since nobody plays an order to attack the Narrow Sea, there's no point for them to do the march here. So they're just gonna first discard the march +0 right there. And we've come back around to the Greyjoys. They're going to resolve the march -1 in the Flint's Finger and move their knight unit into Stony Shore. They will also leave behind a power token in Flint's Finger. So they still have 1, 2, 3, 4 castles and strongholds in altogether. Now back to the Baratheons. Even though Lannister just refreshed their house cards, the Baratheons' house cards are still pretty strong as well. So they're gonna go ahead and march the knight from Clockout Point into Harrenhal. And they will leave a power token behind in Clockout Point. And they will now each choose a house card in secret. And here we go. So Stannis Baratheon and Sir Jaime Lannister. So the Baratheon have a total combat strength of 6 and Lannister only have 4. So obviously the Baratheons will win the combat, and both of these cards are now discarded. The footman unit was routed before, so it cannot retreat, it's destroyed instead. And now the knight had to retreat, and the only area that's available is the Stony Sept. Baratheons gain a castle, and Lannister lost a castle. They only have Riverrun left now. Following Baratheon is now the Tyrell player. They are just simply gonna discard the March +0 order right here. The Lannister lost its March order when they lost Harrenhal to the Baratheons. So we'll now skip over them and move on to the Stark, which only have one more March order left. They are going to march one of the footman units from the Eyrie into Widow's Watch. And back around to our turn, and I just realized we actually skipped ourselves in the first round of marches. So that's why we still have 3 march orders left. Doesn't matter though. Well, I mean, it is obviously bad because we sort of broke the flow of the play, but it doesn't affect the overall situation in the game board. So what we're gonna do is let's just assume in the first round of march, we just want to discard the March +1 because nobody's attacking the East Summerseat, so this order is really not all that useful for now. And now, back in the second round of March, it's our turn again. We're just gonna resolve the March -1 in Starfall and move the Knight unit into Princess Pass. And we're also gonna leave a power token so that we'll still retain control of Starfall. There we go. A little silly mistake, but then thankfully, it was easy to fix that and it doesn't affect the overall gameplay very much. And now back to the Greyjoys again. They have one more march order left in the Stony Shore. They are going to decide to march all 2 knights and 1 siege engine into Riverrun. So now the situation is the siege engine provides 4 combat strength because this is the area containing a stronghold. So it's 4 and 6, 8. So basically 8 versus 2, 4, 6. 8 versus 6. Now they have to each choose a house card in secret. Pretty much no matter what the Lannister plays, they are not gonna win. So let's see what they got. So Cersei and Euron Crow's Eye. So the sword icon will kill off one of their units there. And both of these cards are now discarded. So the Lannister obviously chose to take the footman as a casualty, while the 2 knights will retreat into Stony Sept, routed. That's the only place where they can retreat now. And Greyjoy gains another stronghold, and poor Lannister, they are completely off the board now. They don't even have a single castle on stronghold. Back to the Baratheons, they're going to march the siege engine to King's Landing. And now it's our turn. This is the last march order of this round. And I just realized that because the Tyrells were battling against the Lannisters, the house cards are pretty terrible right now. They only have a 0, a 2, and a 3. And if I march one of my knights from Princess Pass into 3 towers, it's a 2 versus 1 situation. And because the highest card the Tyrells have is only a 3, if I play at least a 2, I will tie with them and I'll win the tie because I'm higher on the 15th track. And my 2 has a sword icon there too, so I can kill off their footman unit right there. I think that's not a bad idea, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. So we're gonna march 1 knight unit into the 3 towers. So it's 2 versus 1 right now, and we'll each choose a house card in secret and see what we each have chosen. And the Tyrells have chosen a house card, and we reveal, and it is indeed Sir Loras Tyrell. And like I said, we have a total combat strength of 4, but they have a 4 as well with 1 + 3, but we win the tie on the 15th track. So our sword icon here in this case will kill off the footman unit right there. And both of these house cards are discarded. And that's all the march orders. We're now going to resolve the consolidated power order. Starting with the Greyjoy, they will get 2 power tokens from Pike. The Baratheon will get 2 from Kingswood and 1 from the port in Dragonstone for a total of 3 power tokens. And Tyrell will get 2 from the Arbor and 1 from the port, so for a total of 3 power tokens. Stark will get 2 from Carhold and 1 from White Harbor for a total of 3 power tokens. And lastly, we also got 3 power tokens, 2 from Sunspear and 1 from the port, so 3 power tokens in total. And after that, we move on to round 6. And let's see what the Westro events will bring us this time. We had mustering last time, so let's see what this next one is. Another mustering. Okay. And we had Dark Winds and Dark Words last time. This time, let's see what we have. Oops, should have done that. Oh, another Dark Wind and Dark Words. I have to adjust the wildling icon there too. And finally, the Web of Lights are over. Let's see what this next one says. And it is Wildling's attack. So let's do some musterings again. It kinda sucks for the Greyjoy because they are at the supply limit right now. So this mustering and here, the strongholds, they cannot muster any troops at all. For Seaguard, they can put another knight in there. And Flint's Finger, a footman right there. Up there. A lot of there. And here, Stronghold, they cannot even muster a ship because they have all 6 of the ships out already. And they cannot add any more units here because that will break the supply limit. So that's it. That's all for the Greyjoys. They will probably benefit more from updating the supplies because right now they have 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 5 supply barrels, so that's a lot. No, actually, in fact, they have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that would have been more helpful than the mustering, but that's the game for you. The Baratheons are in a very similar situation as the Greyjoys. They're already at the supply limit with 3, 2, 2 here. So they cannot really do much mustering. The King's Landing mustering points are wasted. They can put 1 in Cracklaw Point with a single footman unit. And for Dragonstone, they can put a knight unit in there, and that's about it. And for the Harrenhal, they can put nothing there again because of the supply limit. Oh, and I should mention, the Lannister Knights should be not routed anymore. I forgot to do that. It seems like everybody's reaching the supply limit right now. So the High Garden Stronghold is wasted because they cannot muster any more units without breaking the supply limit. For the Old Town though, they can upgrade both footmen into something else. They can upgrade one of them into another knight, and the other one into a siege engine. They already have all 5 knights out, and they can actually put another footman in the reach. So that's 3, 2, 2, 2, just at the size limit right there. And Stark is also reaching their supply limit. They are not going to muster anything in the Eyrie, or from the Eyrie rather. For White Harbor, they're actually gonna muster a ship in the harbor, the port rather. In Winterfell, they'll also muster another knight unit, and now they're really at the supply limit with 3, 2, and 2. And they will upgrade the footman in Moat Cailin into a knight. And back to us, we're probably the biggest benefactor of this all, because we can actually utilize all of our muster points, all 4 of them. So in Sunspear, we're going to muster a knight, and in Ironwood, we're going to upgrade one of the footmen into a knight unit, and in Starfall, just a footman unit there will be good. So we are 3, 2, and 2. We're still good. And now Baratheon, who holds the Messenger Raven token, gets to decide whether we do Clash of Kings, which would bid for the influence tracks, or we get power tokens, or we do nothing. Again, the Baratheons are happy with the position they are at on the tracks, on the influence tracks, because they are the first on the King's Court, and the 3rd on the 5th end, and the 2nd on the Iron Throne. So they're happy with that. They're not gonna do another bidding. And they don't want people to gain power tokens either, so they are gonna choose option C again. The card has no effect. And now the wildlings will attack with a strength of 10. So this time it's a little bit more interesting because most of the houses have a lot of power tokens to bid this time. The Stark player is tied with us Martells with 12 power tokens in total. Baratheons have 11, Tyrells have 8, Greyjoy has 7, and Lannisters have 5. Now remember, the Baratheons used the Messenger Raven token before to look at the top card on the Wildlings deck, but they decided to put the card in the bottom of the deck. So now they have no idea what the top card on the deck is either. Now, it's more likely that we are able to fend off the wildlings because we have so many power tokens. However, the highest bidder will have a special reward from the card, and it's up to the individual player whether or not they want to go for that reward or just bid minimally to make sure the wildlings will successfully be defeated. So now the question is, should we go for the reward for being the highest bidder in the defense against a wildlings attack? If we go for it, we'll have to bid quite a bit of a token, and if we get outbidded by somebody else, then all that tokens will just go to waste. And then if the Clash of Kings come out in the future, then we're at quite a bit of disadvantage to bid for a better position on the tracks. But I kind of want to go for it, but not too crazy about it. Right now, we're ahead of the Tyrell, Greyjoy, and Lannister. So I think it's safe if we bid, say, 3 tokens. And we'll just see what happens when we bid that. And now let's see what all the other houses have decided to bid. So we have, I think Lannister has pretty much given up on this game. They didn't bid anything. So we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So more than enough to defeat the wildlings. And Stark has outbid us with 4 tokens. So they are the winner. They get to see what the reward is on the top of the wildlings, on the card on the top of the wildlings deck. So we have Preemptive Raid. So the highest bidder, the wildlings immediately attack again with a strength of 6. You do not participate in the bidding against this attack. Oh, okay. Interesting. So all of these power tokens are now discarded. And we'll reduce the wildlings down to 0 strength, which I'll do sort of off screen. But now they will technically attack again with a strength of 6. So I'm going to place the card in the bottom here. So here are the available power tokens for each houses. I have excluded the Stark because they don't need to participate in this bidding process. Should we go for the reward again? Again, nobody knows the top card on the wildlings deck right now because it's a fresh, well, just because nobody knows. Should we go for the reward again, or should we play it safe? If everybody bids at least 1 token, then we have a strength of 5, which is not enough to defeat the 6. So if we want to be safe, we should really bid 2 tokens, especially given the fact that Lannister bid nothing in the last round. So we definitely need that extra bit of a... I mean, if they bid nothing again, then they'll technically be the dead last by default. But if they bid something, then they will not be the last. It's kind of hard to decide. I think we're going to bid 2, just to be on the safe side, to make sure we can actually defeat the wildlings and to see if we can by chance beat the top bidder in this bidding process. So let's do that. And it looks like we have a 3-way tie between us, the Tyrells, and the Baratheons. And we definitely have more than enough to defeat the wildling strength of 6. Now, the Greyjoy player who has the Ironstone token, they get to decide who gets to be the highest bidder and receive the reward. Before they do that though, they can actually draw the card first and see what the reward is. And then the Greyjoy player can decide who gets the reward. So the card is now Rattleshirt's Raiders. Rattleshirt's Raiders. The highest bidder is increased 1 position on the supply track to no higher than 6. Oh, that's really good. So now the Greyjoy needs to decide who gets to have that reward. So looking at the map, the Greyjoy had decided to break the tie in our favor, so we're gonna move up 1 position on the supply track. The reason being, again, we are the farthest away geographically from the Greyjoy, so we're technically the least threat to them. So they feel a little bit more safer to increase our supply limit, thinking that it doesn't have much effect on the Greyjoys who are so far away. And because the other choices are Baratheons and the Tyrells, which are also both of the houses are pretty close to where the Greyjoys are, so they don't want to increase their supply there. So the card is now placed on the bottom of the Wildlings deck, and all the power tokens that were bidded were discarded. And now we move on to the planning phase for round 6. Now let's plan our orders for round 6. Thanks to the Greyjoys, we have an extra supply now, so we can actually support 2 armies of size 3. We already have one in the Sea of Thorn. I think we're gonna try to make one in Princess Pass as well, just so that we can secure this area really nicely. In order to do that, we're gonna need some march orders. We'll have to march from Ironwood and also from Sunspear. So we're gonna move 1 knight unit to Ironwood, which will give us an army of size 3, and that's okay because our supply allows us to do that now. And then after that, we're gonna use March +0 to move both knights into Princess Pass, and also I guess a footman into the Boneway, so that will form a really nice ring area. That's really hard for the Tyrell players to invade. I think that's gonna be our plan here. So obviously, in Princess Pass, we're gonna place a support order to support all around the adjacent area. As for the Dornish marches, I know there's a power icon on the map, but there's no way we're gonna consolidate power here just because there's so many enemies around us. So we're gonna instead raid. Hopefully, we'll get rid of the support orders in the adjacent areas, so that we can, reduce their attack power when they try to invade us. And lastly, we'll place another support here. They're probably gonna raid it here, but that's no big deal, I suppose. We'll just give it a try and see if that works out. And as usual, we'll place a support in the Sea of Thorn just to support the surrounding areas. For the ship in the port, again, just consolidate power will be sufficient. And we're actually gonna put a raid order just to raid the raid in the West Summersea if there's any, or maybe the support. I don't think they're gonna play support, but that's beside the point. And all that's left now is just a defense order in Starfall, I suppose. And I think that's about it. Alright, so and here we have it. Unsurprisingly, the Tyrell have a support in Highgarden. So now the Baratheon has a chance to use the Messenger Raven, and they will do so to look at the top card on the Wildlings deck. They take a look at it, and they have decided to place it back on the top of the Wildlings deck. Now we have to resolve the raid orders first. Baratheon has one here, but it has no valid target, so it just discarded right away. And actually, I got ahead of myself. The Greyjoys are supposed to resolve their raid orders first, not Baratheon. But it doesn't really matter because the Greyjoy raid order doesn't affect the raid order in the Baratheon player's land. And they have to discard this raid order too because there's no valid target in the adjacent areas. So after Greyjoy should be Baratheon, but I already did Baratheon's turn. So we're gonna go over to Greyjoys. Sorry, not Greyjoy, Tyrells. They only have one raid order, and obviously this one was placed here to protect their support order here. They can either raid our support in 3 towers, or the raid order in Dornish marches. And getting rid of the 3 towers will only get rid of 2 combat strengths in Dornish marches. So what they're gonna do instead is raid our raid order to protect the support order in the Highgarden. The Lannister has no raid orders, so we skip over to Stark, whose raid order in the port has no valid target, so it's discarded. We have one more raid order in the East Summersea, and we do have a valid target at the support in Shipbreaker's Bay. It doesn't make much difference because nobody's attacking the East Summer Sea this turn, and I don't think the Baratheons want to take Storm's End anytime soon. So we could raid the support in Shipbreaker's Bay, but then that would make an enemy out of Baratheons, and that's something we try to avoid if we can. So we can just simply discard the raid order, because raiding the Baratheon support doesn't really do any benefits for us, but it will actually create a new enemy for us. So that's not a good idea. So this raid order, we're gonna just discard it right away. Alright, now moving on to march orders. Greyjoy will resolve one first. They are going to resolve the march +0 and move 2 of the knight units into Stony Sept. So now the combat strengths will be 2-4 from the Greyjoy versus 6 from Lannisters. There's no support around in the area. So they will now each pick a house card in secret and reveal them. And they have done so, and here we go. So Greyjoy has played Balon. And basically, the printed combat strength of the opponent's house card is reduced to 0. This is probably the most powerful card in the entire game. But Lannister played Tyrion. So basically, they can immediately cancel the opponent's house card and have them choose a different one. And I think they're gonna do it. So the Lannister has asked the Greyjoy to put this card back in their hand and choose a different house card. And that's what they're gonna do. So Greyjoy chose Aaron Denfear. Or that's how you pronounce it, I think. So here it says you can immediately discard 2 of your available power tokens to discard this card and choose a different house card from your hand if able. And that's what the Greyjoys are going to do. They're going to discard 2 power tokens along with this house card, and they're actually going to bring back Balon. So with this, it's 2 versus 0, and Greyjoy has a total combat strength of 6, and the Lannister also have 6. But the Greyjoy wins the tie because they are higher on the 15th track. Both of these house cards are now discarded as well. The Lannisters must now retreat their knights. And the only valid area for them to retreat to is 0 marches. And they can only retreat 1 because of the supply limit. They can have a maximum army size of 3 units. So these 2 knights are now just destroyed right away. And now it's Baratheon's turn. They wanted to attack the Greyjoy because they're on the verge of winning, the Greyjoys that is. But right now, Greyjoy has only 1 house card left, and it's a combat value of 3. And once they attack the Greyjoy refresh their house cards right away, and then they may retaliate right away. Well, maybe not in this turn right away, but in the upcoming turns. So instead, the Baratheons want to turn towards the Tyrells, who are a little bit weaker. So they are going to march their knights, 2 of them into King's Landing. Let's move that a little bit. And 1 into the Reach. So in here, we have 2 from the Baratheon, and then support from King's Landing as well. And because there's a castle in the Reach, the Siege Engine will provide 4 combat strengths, for a total of 4, 6, 8, 9 support, and 2 from the Knights, so a total combat strength of 11. The Tyrells have 2, 3, and also support from Highgarden, so a total of 6 support. So the Tyrells have a total of 9 combat strengths versus the Baratheons' 11 combat strengths. Now they will each choose a house card in secret and reveal them. And here we go. And here, Tyrell has chosen Queen of Thorn. Here it says immediately remove 1 of your opponent's order tokens in any one area adjacent to the embattled area. And you may not remove the march order token. That's okay. So that's actually a pretty smart play, because now they actually get to remove the support order in King's Landing. So if you recalculate the combat strength, now it's only 2 and no support from King's Landing versus a lot of, I think it was 9, right? So, and plus the 1, so 3 versus 9. So the Baratheon has lost the combat. They must retreat to where they came from, and they are routed. And the Reach is still intact. Both of these house cards are obviously also discarded. And now Tyrell's turn to march. They are in a very tricky situation right now because this is the only house card they have. So every other house knows exactly how much combat strength they have. So for example, if they decide to attack Dornish marches, then we know exactly the card to play to counteract that, so that we either guarantee we win. Actually, we will definitely win the battle here if we play our 4. Then because we have a lot of support here as well. And if they take Blackwater, which is very, very tempting, because this unit from Baratheon is routed, so it doesn't contribute any combat strength. So if they march their knight here, it's like 2 versus 0. And no matter what card the Baratheon plays, the Tyrell player will guarantee to be victorious. The problem is they have another march +1 here, the Baratheons, so they can just march right back, and the Tyrell player will then have to use their 4 again to defend. Because if they only use the 3, the Baratheon can play another 3 again to match them. And once it's matched, because Tyrell is on the lowest position of the 15th track, they will lose the tie and it will just go back to the reach again. I mean, they could theoretically defend it, but then they had to waste their high combat card, the 4 card. Then what's the point? They do get 2 barrels though, so that might be worth it, because right now they only have 2 barrels in High Garden. Another option is they can actually march to 0 marches, and with the support from High Garden, they will definitely win the combat, and therefore eliminate the entire Lannister out of the game. And they get to refresh their house cards too. The only problem is if the Lannisters are gone, then there's one less thing for the Greyjoys to worry about. Then it's more likely the Greyjoy will win the entire game too. But given the options, I think the Tyrell player will think the 0 marches will be the best bet for them. So they're going to actually march into 0 marches. So the Lannister actually has a combat strength of 2, 4, 6. And now the Greyjoys actually have 2 supports in 0 marches. They can choose to either support the Tyrells or the Lannisters. And they have a total of 3 support. Tyrell have 6 support. So 1, 2, 3, 6. Yeah. The Greyjoys are happy to see the Tyrells attacking the Lannisters because they want the Lannisters to be gone. So they will indeed decide to offer their support to the Tyrells. So the Tyrell combat strength will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 versus 6, pretty much. So no matter what card the Lannister player plays, they will definitely lose the combat. And they will be eliminated completely from the game. Yeah, so but for the sake of just playing making sure the game goes, they're gonna choose these house cards, and obviously the Tyrells win. So all of the Lannister's units, not only are they destroyed by the 2 sword icons, but they have nowhere to retreat to. So they are completely eliminated from the game. And these house cards are now discarded, and the Tyrells will get the other 6 cards back. Their house cards have now refreshed. As for the Stark, they will move the Knight unit from Moat Cailin into White Harbor. And that's it for the March +0 order. And back to us, like we had originally planned, we'll move the Knight from Sunspear into Ironwood, so that we can move next time to Princess Pass. And now back to the Greyjoys. They have one more March +1 order here, but they've decided just to discard it and not do anything about it. And the Baratheons will march their footmen into the Mountains of the Moon, and they will discard the Stark's power token in that area. The Tyrells do not have any more march orders, and the Lannisters have been completely eliminated from the game. So now we'll go back to Stark to resolve their March -1 order in Widow's Watch. As you can imagine, they're not too happy about losing the Mountains of the Moon. But they don't think they can take it back this turn either. They're gonna march to the Fingers for now, and leaving behind a power token in Widow's Watch. And we now have the last march of the round. We're going to move the footmen into the Boneway, 2 of the knights into Princess Pass like we planned, and we're gonna leave behind Ironwood so that we still retain control of the castle there. And now we'll resolve the consolidated power order. Starting with the Greyjoys, they'll get 2 from Pike. The Baratheons will get 2 from Dragonstone and 1 from the port in Dragonstone for a total of 3 power tokens. Tyrells will also get 3 power tokens, 1 from the port and 2 from the arbor. Stark will get 2 from the Eyrie and 2 from Carhold for a total of 4 power tokens. And lastly, we just get 1 power token from our ship in the port. And now moving to round 7. Let's see what the Westeros phase brings us this time. We had mustering last time, so the new card will be supply. So with just the supply, we had Dark Winds and Dark Words last time. So the next one will be Winter is coming. So we need to reshuffle this card later. This deck later. Lastly, we had the Wildlings attack. And this time we have Storm of Swords. Defense orders cannot be played during the planning phase. And there's a Wildlings icon. So let's look at the supply situation right now. Starting with the Greyjoy, they have it's gonna be very beneficial for the Greyjoy because they go all the way up to 6 supply, the biggest army size possible. Next up are the Baratheons. They have 5 in total. They get 2 from Blackwater and 1 in the Mountains of the Moon. And next up are the Tyrells. They lost the 3 towers, but they gained 0 marches, so they stay at 3 with no change. And the Lannister, unfortunately, have no supply at all. They go down to 0. And Stark also have quite a bit of gain. They have 4 in total. And we, the Martells, have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Since all the houses, except for Lannister, have increased supply, there's no need for us to check for army sizes because chances are they are not gonna exceed the supply limit since we just increased the supply. Except for Lannister, but they have no armies left on the map anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So now moving on to Westeros deck 2, we have Winter is coming. So we're gonna reshuffle this deck right here, and we'll have to draw a new one, and resolve the new card. Let's see what we have this time. So with this card, basically all the probability of drawing certain events have been reset, and we'll see what this new card will get us. Another Dark Winds, Dark Words, and we have to resolve the Wildlings icon now again. And with Dark Winds, Dark Words, again, the Baratheon player gets to decide if we can bid for the influence tracks again, or gain power tokens, or nothing happens. And they are happy with the way things are right now, because they're on the top spot in the King's Court trap, and they don't want that to change. So they're gonna just choose nothing happens again. And with that, we move to round 7 planning phase, and this time no defense orders can be played in this planning phase. Now let's take a look at our situation here for our planning phase for round 7. Let's start with the easy ones first. We're still gonna place a support in Princess Pass. That's a given because we want to make sure the surrounding land areas have very strong defense. Unfortunately, we cannot play any defense orders in this round, so that limits our available orders and the flexibility that we have. My original plan was to wait for the Tyrells to die down because we took over their supply, but then they got another supply in 0 marches, so their army size didn't decrease, so that was a bummer for us. However, we did adjust supply just now, and now we can actually have an army size of 4. One of the army size can be up to 4. So I think this is a good chance as any to actually start naval assault to the Tyrell's territory. Because we can actually have a lot of ships in East Summersea to attack the West Summersea now. And once we take over the ship, then it will be easier for our lane troops to attack them directly. So I think we're gonna do that. This round. So we're gonna start marching our ships around and also the ship in our port here as well. So we'll put a march -1 here, and we'll put a march +1 in the East Summer Sea because this will be our main attack order. And we're also gonna move ships out of Sea of Thorn. And after we do that, actually I already placed it here, but we're gonna place a consolidated power here. Oh, I can't. I can only have 1 star order. So actually we cannot do that. So actually what's gonna have to happen then is, let's see here. For Sunspear, we'll just do a normal consolidated power that way. So let's see if we march. So we're gonna march all the ships out of Sea of Thorn first, and then to East Summer Sea, and then to West Summer Sea. Okay, so we have a total of 5 ships. So if 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think we can do this. That should be okay. All right, and as usual, we're gonna place a raid order here to destroy any support they might have there, and also another raid order there, and also a support here, because they didn't raid our support last time, so that was good. And unfortunately, that leaves us with Starfall with no order that we can place. The only order we can place now is just another consolidated power order because we cannot play any defense orders this round. So hopefully our naval sort of strategy will work. Once we take over the West Summer Sea, it will be an advantage to us now for our land troop units to attack their castles and strongholds directly. Alright, so let's see what the other houses have placed their orders for. So now all the orders are revealed. Baratheon now can use the Messenger Raven to either swap an order or look at the top card of the Wildlings deck. And they actually decided to do neither because they already know what the top card is and they don't want to switch their orders around. First, we resolve the raid orders. The Greyjoys will go first. They will raid the raid in the Winterfell port from the Stark. Next, the Baratheons, they will raid the support in Stony Sept. Now it's Tyrell's turn to raid. They are faced with an interesting decision here. They have a raid in the Reach. Do they want to raid the raid in Dornish Marches to protect their support in Old Town? Or are they going to raid the support in Kingswood? Because the Baratheon player has made it pretty clear verbally that they have no intention of having peace with the Tyrells. So these march orders are really meant to be offensive invasion towards the Tyrells. So the raid can either raid the support in Kingswood or raid the raid in Dornish Marches to protect the support in Old Town. So they can only choose one of the two, but not both. So it's an interesting decision that they have to make right now. And in the end, the Tyrells have decided to raid the raid in Dornish Marches. Wasn't an easy decision, but it's gotta be made someday. Has to be made eventually. The decision has to be made eventually. We skip over Lannisters, and now it's Stark's turn. They only have 1 raid in the Narrow Sea, and they can only raid the raid in the Shipbreaker Bay. And now it's our turn. We have a raid order in the Boneway. We can actually raid Kingswood support here. But we've always had such a good relationship with the Baratheons. And because we're starting a naval assault towards the Tyrells, we're leaving the East Summer Sea pretty open. So we want to make sure diplomatically we're still on good terms with the Baratheons. So we decided not to use our raid order to raid the support in Kingswood. Back to the Greyjoys. They have 1 raid order in Sunset Sea, and they can raid the raid in West Summer Sea. But the Tyrell player played it with the Greyjoy, saying they really need the raid order to deal with us, the Martells, with our support in 3 towers, or even the consolidated power in Starfall. And they promised the Greyjoys that they will not advance north to bother the Greyjoys. And the Greyjoys kind of agreed. They don't think the Tyrells are a threat to them right now, and having the Tyrells deal with the Martells will keep the Tyrells busy so that they will not invade the castles and strongholds up north. So the Greyjoys have decided to discard the raid orders in Sunset Sea. And Tyrell's raid order is the only one left right now, so they're going to go ahead and raid the support in 3 towers. Now, Greyjoy's turn to march. They will resolve the march -1 first, moving 1 knight unit into River Run, and the other one actually will attack 0 marches. So here, the combat strength of the knight is 2, but -1, so it's only 1. And there's no other support area other than the Greyjoy ship support, which is 2. So the total combat right now is 3 versus 2, I think. Yeah, that's right. So 3 versus 2. And now actually the Greyjoy only has 1 house card left, and that's the Victorian Greyjoy. And he says, if you're attacking, all of your participating ships, including supporting Greyjoy ships, are at +2 to the combat strength instead of +1. So effectively, the Tyrell player knows exactly how much combat strength the Greyjoy has. So it's 2, and now the ship adds 2, so 4, 5, but then -1, so 4, and so +3, for a total of 7 combat strengths. And Tyrell have only 2. Even if the Tyrell play their highest card, which is a 4, it's still not enough to beat the Greyjoys. So they will instead just play a 1 and to avoid any casualties. So the Greyjoys are victorious. So both of these house cards are discarded, but Greyjoy's house card will be refreshed. And the Tyrell Knight will have to retreat somewhere. They can either retreat to the Reach, or they can retreat to the Arbor down south. And I think that's what the Tyrells will do, because the Reach is a very dangerous war zone right now with the Baratheons seemingly wanting to attack. So once they lose the Reach, the Knight will be destroyed as well. So they don't want the Knight to be routed in the Reach. And of course, the Greyjoy will leave a power token in Lennoxport before they march, so that they can still control Lennoxport. And now the Baratheons turn to march. They're gonna use the march +1 to move into the Eyrie. So now the combat strength of the Baratheon is 1 + 1, so it's 2. The siege engine of the Stark is actually 0 combat strength because they're defending an area with a castle. The siege engine doesn't count as any combat strength at all. Now they each select a card in secret to reveal for combat, but it doesn't really matter which card the Stark chooses, because even if they play a 4, as long as the Baratheon plays a 2 or higher, they will tie with the Stark or beat them. And in case of a tie, the Baratheons will win the tie due to being on a higher position of the 5th track. But anyway, so let's take a look. So yeah, so it's a 2 versus 2. That's just a sword and fortress, nothing special. For Roose Bolton though, the Stark can now, because they lost the combat, they can return the entire house card discard pile into the Stark's hand. And well, this goes back to the Stark's hand, and this card is discarded. The siege engine is destroyed immediately because siege engine cannot retreat, and Baratheon gained another castle. So Baratheons gain the castle, Stark loses the castle. Tyrell's turn. They have decided to move 1 knight from Highgarden through their ship transport into Starfall. They are attacking Starfall with just 1 knight, which is really bizarre, because we have a combat strength of 1 plus a support of 6, so for a total of 7. It's pretty much 7 versus 2. There's no way that the Tyrell players will win, but we still have to pick our house cards anyways. Since no matter what we choose, we will definitely win the battle anyways. There's no point in choosing the high cards. I think we're gonna choose just Nymeria Sand, because Arian Martell is really nice. If you lose the combat, the opponent cannot move into the area they just conquered. So it's a very good deterrent against the opponents. So I guess we'll play just this one. It only gives us a fortress if we were defending. So and like I said, playing 3 and 4 would not make any sense because we can win this combat so easily. So we're gonna play Nightmare Ascent for this combat. And the Tyrell has chosen the Queen of Thorn. Okay, so if you don't remember, they can remove an order token in any one area adjacent to the in battle area. So both of these cards are now discarded. And now immediately, the Tyrell player decided to remove our March +1 order in the East Summer Sea. This area, it is actually adjacent to Starfall, so they can do this. So that's kind of a bummer. I think they realized by looking at the way we placed our march orders that we were gonna attack them through the sea. So they wanted to prevent that from happening, and therefore they used Queen of Thorn and attacked the Starfall. So the knight has to retreat back to where he came from, so they had to go back to High Garden, and it became routed. And now, skipping over the Lannisters, we're now moving on to Stark. They are going to resolve the March -1 first, moving one knight unit into White Harbor, and the other knight to the Fingers. And now it's our turn. We lost the March +1 order in East Summer Sea, so there's really not much point in moving our ships out of their respective positions. I mean, we could keep all the ships in the Sea of Thorn, but it's not really doing much right now because there's no immediate threat around the area. Or we can just move all the ship out for now and plan our attacks next turn again. So we have all the ships ready in here, and then we're gonna attack next turn. We can do that, I suppose. For the time being, let's just resolve the March -1 first and move the ship into the East Summer Sea. And now coming back around to Greyjoy's turn, they'll resolve their March +0 first, and they're going to move the siege engine actually to Seaguard, and the knight will move into Harrenhal. And this time, I'll remember they're gonna leave a power token there. So now it's a combat strength of 2 versus 2. There's no support around it. They will now each select a house card in secret, although for Baratheon, it's not much of a secret because both of their house cards are at combat strength 3. So they have chosen their respective house cards and they'll reveal it. So Baratheon will definitely lose, and because of the sword icon, the knight is destroyed. So the final combat strength is 5 versus 6. And both of these cards are now discarded. The Baratheons only have one card left, and it's this card. And it's actually a combat strength of 3 because the Stannis Baratheon house card is in the discard pile right now. But that's another battle. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the knight in Harrenhal is now destroyed because of the sword icon. And Greyjoy is now at 6 castle and strongholds, and Baratheon is down to 4. Greyjoy is really close to winning now. Now Baratheon will resolve their march order. They will march the siege engine into Blackwater, a knight into the Reach, and the other knight into Storm's End. So in the Reach, the Baratheon have 2 from the knight, 3 and 4 from the support. Whereas the Tyrells only have a single footman unit, and there's no support around it. So Baratheon only have one house card left, and it's this card. Like I said, it's actually a combat strength of 3 because of the special effect here. And this card also has a sword icon because the Stannis Baratheon house cards in the discard pile. So the final combat strength for Baratheon is actually 2, 4, 6, 7 versus Alistair Florent. Just 1, so 7 versus 2. So both of these cards are discarded, and Baratheon's house cards have refreshed. The footman has to retreat somewhere, but there's actually no place for them to retreat because every area surrounding it is occupied by an enemy. They cannot retreat to High Garden because that will break their supply limit. So this footman now is destroyed. So in a single movement, the Baratheon gained back 2 castles, and the Tyrell lost 1 in the Reach. And Tyrell and Lannister have no more march orders, so it is now Stark's last march order. They have decided to march the knight into the Eyrie to try to take it back, and the footman into Moat Kaelin to strengthen the defense. And they're going to leave behind a power token at the fingers. So right now it's 2 versus 1. There's no support in the surrounding area. So if Stark plays the high card, the 4, then the Baratheon will definitely lose. But will they play the 4? That's the question. So they've each picked their own card, and they reveal. So they didn't pick the 4, but the Baratheon thought they would, so they picked the 0. And so Stark will have a total strength of 4 versus 1. And the sword icon will kill off the footman unit in the Eyrie. So this is destroyed right away. And more importantly though is patch phase. At the end of combat, you may look at your opponent's hand and discard one card of your choice. So that's a bummer for Stark. And now both of these cards are discarded. And the Baratheon player looks at Stark's hand. Now the obvious choice are either Roose Bolton or Eddard Stark. Eddard Stark being the number 4 card with 2 sword icons. Whereas Roose Bolton can refresh the Stark house card. So even if they discard Eddard Stark, there's a chance that they can get it back right away with Roose Bolton. So I think they're gonna discard Roose Bolton in this case. So now Baratheons lose another castle, whereas Stark gained 1 back. And back to our turn. We were originally planning to march the ship out of the Sea of Dorne to East Summersea so that we can launch an assault to West Summersea and take over Tyrell. However, now that the Baratheons on our tail, they sort of betrayed us and they took over Storm's End. I think we want to keep the ships in Sea of Dorne so that we can have support here and take it back. So we're just gonna discard the march or we can just keep 2 ships here and just march 1 out. That way we can still attack the next turn. Yeah, let's do that for now, I guess. Alright, so that's it. We resolve our last march order. And now coming back around to Greyjoy again, they have one last march order to resolve. And they have decided to march all of their units, which is just a knight and a siege engine, into Moat Kaelin with the march +1 order. So Greyjoy has 2, 3, and 4 from siege engine. So that's 2, 6, 7. A total of combat strength of 7. Stark has 2, 3, and support of 6 from White Harbor. So that's 9, I believe. 2, 3, yeah, so it's a combat strength of 9. So 7 versus 9. Pretty much Stark is guaranteed to win. Sorry, not Stark, the Greyjoy, because they're just gonna play this card right here, Balon Greyjoy. So he adds 2 to the combat strength. More importantly, the printed combat strength of your opponent's house card is reduced to 0. So no matter what card the Stark picks, so say if they pick Eddard, even if they do that, the 4 is now reduced to a 0. So the final combat strength will be 2, 4, 8, 9. 9 versus 2, 3, 9. 9 versus 9. And not only do the Greyjoys win the tie, they actually also have the Valyrian Steel Blade. So they can just add 1 and it becomes a 10. So they win the combat for sure. So these will retreat somewhere, it doesn't really matter. And that was the 7th castle gained by Greyjoy, and they have now immediately won the Game of Thrones. We came in, I guess, 3rd last. We only have 3 castles and strongholds. Lannister is the dead last, they have nothing. And Tyrell is right behind us, and then Stark and Baratheon are sort of neck to neck right there. Alright, so that's the entire gameplay of the Game of Thrones, the board game for 6 players. I hope if you have never played this game before, that after watching this video, you have a better idea of if this game is right for you and your gaming group. It's quite interesting how the Greyjoy won after just 7 rounds. And poor Lannister, they have like absolutely nothing. No units, no castles, no strongholds, no nothing. But anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my little video here, and if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe to my channel and you'll get notified when I upload new videos. And thanks again for watching and see you next time.